Right, Kev, start.
Okay, so this is for all reverse shleima for all the cholim of Klal Yisrael. May they receive a speedy reverse shleima. So, continuing with the theme of Yom Kippur and fasting, I'll be as brief as possible. I won't be too long. So it says here, in Vayikra, it says, "It shall be a statute to you forever in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, that you shall afflict yourselves, and you shall do no work, either the native or the stranger who sojourns among you." Now it says that about all festivals. It doesn't just say that about Yom Kippur, but it says that in all the parashiot relating to festivals. So let's just say go to a section here. It says, and this is from Chabad. So Chabad is legit and orthodox halachic source. So it says, who must fast? Okay, there's a couple of bullet points here. Every man and woman, starting from adulthood, boys from the age of 13 and girls from the age of 12. A pregnant woman must fast unless this would put her at risk, and we prefer choosing to eat less than the above quantity, and only if there's no choice do we let her eat as usual. So unless she's really feeling ill, obviously that's the yardstick, but one would have to consult a doctor or rabbi who has experience with this. And a woman who gave birth within the last 3 days must not fast. So after 3 days, it depends on how she's feeling. So at least there is some leniency there. And it says 7 days after the birth, if the woman is healthy, she must not eat unless she feels unwell and is defined as having an illness that involves risk. Okay. And this is one more thing about women. So you see, we're trying to cover all genders and everyone, not just trying to be inclusive. A breastfeeding woman whose child feeds only from her and who could be at risk if his mother fasts. In such a case, the mother may drink or eat in accordance with the doctor's instructions. And as we wrote above, we prefer eating or drinking not to exceed a portion, which is called a shear. Sounds like shiur, but it's called that's the actual word, is the certain quantity which is considered neither eating nor drinking. If it's under a certain quantity, then it's as if one never ate or drank. And one can have that if one needs to take medication, as I mentioned the other day, or in this case. Okay, then we'll continue next. Let's continue next time.
Okay.
Damon, did I do that quite fast?
You did that excellently, but excellently.
Now,
Gavin,
was that fast?
It was enlightening.
No, it was a joke. I said that I do that very fast.
Yeah, but I said it was enlightening, like that.
Yes, clever.
Enlightening
okay.
and
lightning speed.
Lightning speed, but enlightening, and like I kind of tried to do two in one. All right, yeah. Damon, thanks, Kevin. That was interesting. I appreciate it. Learned one or two things.
Okay, so Kevin, a shear is just a size or measurement. Okay, and it's generally the determination for a minimum prescribed amount of food or drinking during certain fasts, etc. You've got the kazait, it's like an olive, size of an olive. Then you've got a beta, guys. You've got an egg. You've got a revet. That's mainly 85 to 150 mils. There's different opinions, but a shear is mainly just a measurement, guys. It's not a specific quantity. That's obviously outlined in different sources. All right, let's get started. So I'm just covering one or two things we knew. We were now at the point of debate with this issue with Rava on the actual fixed property. So just to go through with you, there was an Amorite ruling regarding inheritors or heirs who had an obligation regarding property that they borrowed. So Rava said if their father died and left them a cow he had borrowed, they may use it all the days for which it was borrowed by their father. So all it's saying there is that if you borrow something, you require the right to use it until the period of time has elapsed, according to the Ravad. So if the borrower dies during the period, the right to use it is inherited by his heirs. Now, that was the direct translation of Bava according to Rashi. And then it said, but if he died, then there might be a case where they are not liable to pay because they're not responsible for unavoidable mishaps that befall it. So, you know, guys, a borrower is normally liable even for unavoidable mishaps, as an honest death of an animal. So these heirs never accepted the responsibility of protecting the animal. They didn't even know necessarily the exact arrangement according to Rava. So they can't be held accountable for its death. The Rosh doesn't agree. He said that leniency applies only where the owner allowed the arrangement to continue as is without interfering or making any stipulations concerning it. The owner, however, guys, does have the right to demand that they either return the object that they borrowed or accept the responsibilities of a borrower, just like their father had. So as far as that's concerned, we can either go like the Rosh or like Rava. Now, if they thought that it was their father's cow and they slaughtered and ate it, they pay the owner the value of the cow's meat when sold at the cheap rate. So at this case, there's been human intervention, and they have to pay for it because they are responsible. So if you say in this case, why would they be responsible? Whereas in the case of an unavoidable mishap, they didn't, because they never agreed in any way, shape, or form to take on any responsibility. So the issue is, you might not agree to take any responsibility, but this was an active form of damage. So for example, if you reverse your car and you hit another car, you're responsible whether you agree or not. In this case, you took somebody else's property and you damaged it, you're responsible whether you like it or not. So would you say with the unavoidable accident or mishap, why wouldn't the heirs be responsible? Guys, I need a logical reason. Arthur, go for it. Arthur?
A logical answer. Okay, I'm not going to answer something that you want to. Okay.
Is he falling asleep?
The nephew, heard you. Yeah. He said he's on medication, so yeah.
Arthur? I don't even know if he's listening to the show. Should we cancel it for tonight?
No, he's got his earphones in. Let me phone him, Damon. Let me just phone him quickly. No, he's watching. He's got the. There he goes. I'm phoning him. Yeah.
He looks a bit like it. I don't actually have it on that view. Let me put it on that view because I can't actually see it as well.
Damon's trying to ask you a question. Oh, your headphones weren't working. Okay, okay? You sorted them out. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay. No, he had an issue with his headphones. That's fine. Want us to try either Gavin or myself to.
Just want to see if he can hear me. If I didn't check, they wouldn't.
No, he's trying to sort them out. He's trying to sort. Oh, there we go.
I just disconnect for a moment.
Yes.
Okay. Can you? At what point did you hear me, mate?
You were talking about the one rabbi said even though they killed the cow, they are responsible because even though it was they were fully responsible. That's the one I got there from the second rabbi, not the first rabbi. I heard the second one. But the one rabbi said no, they're not because they didn't agree, and the other one said it doesn't make a difference. They basically are responsible because a borrowed animal.
Oh, good. So, all right. So, Kevin, you want to take a stab at it? Not bad, mate.
So why are the heirs? Why would they not be responsible? Is that you on the logical? That's the question, eh?
So the issue is why, in the case of ones, an unavoidable mishap, are the heirs not responsible, but they're responsible in the case of slaughtering the animal that they borrowed. They should be liable for both.
Unavoidable mishap caused by the heirs or before the heirs?
No.
Is it always in the heir's possession?
Okay, so let me just clarify one thing. There's only two positions. According to Rava, that the inheritors, inverted commas, generally refer to inheritors as somebody that's gained an object permanently. But we could say that the inheritors are the son of or daughters of borrowers that have carried on using the product that they borrowed. So according to Rava, there's no responsibility that they have to look after it with an unavoidable mishap. And according to Rava, there is a responsibility as far as if they damage the article. Now, that's all right, guys. Listen, so Rava's got two opinions. He said if it's an unavoidable mishap, they don't take on the obligations of a borrower. Usually a borrower is responsible for everything, even an unavoidable mishap. If I lend you an object and it disappears, you have to replace it. Okay, whether it's your fault or not, you borrowed it. I'm doing you the favor. And saying that if the borrower died and his children got the benefit of the borrowed object, they don't have to replace it in the event that it was not their fault. So Rava contrasts that with the case where they slaughtered the animal and ate it, and when they borrowed a cow, they have to pay the owner the value of the cow's meat when sold at the cheap rate, and that's 2/3 of the market rate. And the reason is that there's human intervention that caused the damage. There's a difference between having a car stolen and actually using it and backing off in a driveway and hitting a brick wall. So because there's human intervention, they are liable, whereas the other one wasn't negligence. It was just an unavoidable mishap. Now, obviously, the Rosh doesn't agree. The Rosh says that the borrower the lender has to have a new arrangement with the borrower's children and say, listen, you want to keep the borrowed item, you have to take on the same obligations as your father had. Okay. Now, however, this is where it gets a bit more complicated. If their father left them real property, land, houses, fields in his estate, they are liable to pay for the borrowed animal from that real property. And the reason being, we'll go through it now, is accordingly, why do you think, Kevin, that there has to be payment from real property if it exists?
Like land or why should the payment come from that?
Firstly, why do we deal with fixed property as opposed to movable?
Because fixed property remains in it's a movable if someone can take it, it can be taken to another location, and it's risky if it's movable property. Fixed property, it's a more solid option, and more like it's not going anywhere. Maybe that's why, and it's
exactly,
it's more secure. More secure.
Movable property is not secure. Somebody can sell it under your nose. Fixed property land is going anyway, so it's often used as a lien on property because it's secure. Absolutely, you can remove somebody from land, but you can't remove land from land. It's exactly the reason. So what we want to know, and this is where we left off last time, is the Gemara cites there's two explanations of Rava's final clause. If their father left them real property, they are liable to pay. Okay, I'm just giving a share. You got holiday. Okay.
Why don't you go to Israel? You always have a good time when you go there.
Yeah, I land up in RCU. It's exciting.
Yeah, you might as well just go straight to RCU.
Not this time. You didn't this last time.
No, I just came back and had to go to RCU time. and then go for surgery. When I came back. All right, let's go back to the shit. Kev, at least I came back. I went into
Exactly.
RC after. Okay. So the Gemara says, I'm sorry, guys. You just,
You have to cut this all out, eh?
no, I'm not. This rest, I'm not. As long as there's no swearing, it's fine. So we're entitled to laugh. May we always laugh at things. So the Gemara cites the guys that cites two explanations of Rava's final clause. If you remember, we left off. It says if their father left them real property, they are liable to pay. So what we don't know is there are two different halachic opinions. There are those who teach it as referring to the first part of Rava's ruling, and there are those who teach it as referring to the latter part of his ruling. The one who teaches it as referring to the first part of the ruling maintains that it certainly applies to the latter part. So what are we saying? What's the first part of Rava's ruling? That if the animal dies of an unavoidable mishap, okay, an honest, okay, the animal dies. If there's real property on that issue, you can attach it. And I'd like to know why. We went through this. Gavin.
No, I actually heard the question. I'm trying to think of the answer. Just repeat the question. I did actually hear you. Just repeat it. I just want to see if it comes back to me. Because I think I know what the answer probably is.
Okay, so the question is as follows: is that the Gemara mentions this phrase that if their father left them real property, they are liable to pay. So there are some rabbinic opinions that say they teach it as referring to the first part of Rava's ruling. And what that basically means is in the first part of his ruling, Rava said that if the borrowed cow dies, for example, the borrower's heirs who are not subject to the liabilities of the borrower do not pay in the event of unavoidable mishaps. So according to the understanding of Rav's statement, Rava then qualified that law by stating that if the father left them real property, they actually do pay for the unavoidable mishaps. Now, why? Before I give you the answer.
Well, firstly, they're not penniless. They actually have money. So
that's a good answer.
So what happens is Hashem's very just the way He's written the Torah. You know that whole thing with widows and orphans. He's very kind to them. So yeah, it's the same type of thing. I'm not sure if the children will be orphaned because there might be another parent, but they definitely lost one parent. So it's quite a loss, and it's a loss financially. So if you don't have the finances to pay for it, so there's no point going after them, targeting them, and then they have to become borrowers because it wasn't their loan to start out with. So the money belonged to the father. So that money has to go to pay the loan because it's back to back. You know what I'm saying? It's not their money. It actually belonged to the father. If it was their own money, then I would say they wouldn't have to pay.
So you hit on the one part of the statement in terms of the kindness aspect, but the kindness only extends to when it's an unavoidable mishap and not where there's human damage, like in the case where they slaughtered the animal before checking whose it was. So in the case where the animal just dies, it's not their fault. It's their intervention that caused the damage that is their fault. So in that case, that's where the disagreement is. But the reason why real property kicks in is slightly different. Because that what happened was, although they did not borrow the animal themselves and are not personally liable for it, the father's liability created a lien on his property during his lifetime. Okay? So in that particular case, I lend you a car and I say, listen, if anything happens to go wrong with it, you need to, if you don't have any cash, you need to sell something in order for me to recover my losses. So that was the arrangement that me as the lender had with the borrower at the time. So that was created in the lifetime of the borrower. When he dies, if that property is still available, what happens is before even orphans can get property, debts have to be paid off, Gavin. People are entitled to their money. Creditors have to be paid. If there are properties that are stolen, you can, and then a thief steals it and then sells it to a purchaser, you can extract the property if you can prove it's yours.
There's a lien. That's actually what I left out. That's what I meant to say. I actually left it out. It's the fact that there's a lien on the property, bottom line. So if there's a lien on the property, you can act on it. It was, like you say, it was drawn up in his lifetime. It was his money, and it's still in effect now. Like you say, before the executor has to pay out all the debt. That's one of the debts. So that's paid out before, and then I think the surplus goes out as inheritance.
So Gavin answered it perfectly. So under this approach of what Gavin's saying, Rava evidently holds that a borrower's liability to pay for unavoidable mishaps is actually incurred not at the time of the mishap, but when he borrowed the animal in the first place. So at that point, he undertook to either return the animal, or if it became unreturnable, damaged or dies, etc., to pay its value. So in our case, therefore, the father had already became liable for any unavoidable mishap when he took possession of the animal, because a borrower is liable for unavoidable mishaps. And a lien, as Gavin said, for this liability took effect on his real property at that time. So although the mishap might have occurred after his death, at which point he could no longer personally become liable, the lender may collect payment from real property, since that property was mortgaged in the father's lifetime when he borrowed that animal. You get it, guys. Gavin's exactly correct. Okay. So that's the approach if there's real property and you want to apply to unavoidable mishaps. Now, there are other Rabbonim that turn around and say, you can't apply to that because it wasn't the borrower's children's fault. There was no human intervention. And therefore, it only applies to the latter case. Arthur, what's the latter case?
The latter case. Okay, the latter case. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
The latter case is if there's fixed property.
No, the latter case. No, what was the latter case, guys? It's open to Kevin or Gavin.
I'm talking the latter case. I'm talking.
Well, the former case was an unavoidable mishap. The latter case.
So the other one is when you kill the animal. That's
correct.
And slaughtered it.
That's exactly it. So Arthur, what it's saying is many of the rabbis hold that you're only liable for the real property for that expense, and you have to pay full value if there's real property. If there's not, you pay 2/3 of the value according to the cheaper rate. But if you have the property with which to pay, why should the lender be out of pocket? You should get the money from the real property to full value. That's the rabbinic opinion. So what we want to know is, do we apply to the first case or the latter case or both? And that's where we ended off last time. And obviously when the Gemara says the one who teaches it as referring to the first part maintains that it certainly applies to the last part. Why? Because we obviously know that in the first case, if the animal died on its own and the heirs must pay from the father's real property because it became mortgaged for that purpose in his lifetime when he borrowed the animal because there was a lien, obviously it renders them liable when they personally were involved in the damage and it wasn't as a result of dying without the intervention. So if they're fully responsible when there's no intervention, when they were part of the problem, of course they're liable. That's what it says in terms of those who teach the first part of the ruling for a what do you call it? A mishap, an unavoidable mishap. They're certainly liable when they killed the animal. Now, obviously, one of the things to bear in mind is whose fault is it that they slaughtered the animal off? Off? Can you hear me?
I think he's got an issue with his headset. He's got an issue with his headset. Yeah, he's got an issue with the headset.
Okay. So, whose fault is it, Kevin?
It's their fault. They're human intervention. It's like they wanted to eat the meat, so they slaughtered it, and it was a deliberate action.
Okay, so
is it because of the lean? Does it?
But
does the lean come?
According to Rabbi Moshe Kaziz, who explains Rashi, said it's actually the father's fault. Because what the father should have done in his lifetime, and this is what Gavin mentioned last year, is that they should have sat down with their children and say, listen, this is how much money we owe, this is the asset sector. And the other question was, well, how did we know that he was going to die? He could have got hit by a truck. And the reason why we have a will, and Arthur said last time, where there's a will, he wants to be in it. And you said, where there's a will, there's a way. Is the will is there because we cannot predict when we're going to die. And therefore, all stipulation on property, whether it's borrowed, owned, or mortgaged in a lien for monies owing, is stated in the will in terms of whom gets what and when. Okay?
Damon?
Yeah?
And the thing is, you will die.
That's very funny.
At age 120, Arthur.
On Main 120. The father did have a certain amount of negligence as far as that's concerned. So let's just gain a little bit of progress. And according to that approach, yeah.
But why? Maybe they didn't think it was necessary to tell them. He should have. He owes money to people, so they should have been aware of it.
Yeah, but the fact of it is the children have to pay, because if they were aware it was somebody else's, they never would have slaughtered the animal. So this caused his children the problem. So he might not have had to, but he actually caused his children to have a problem. So, and according to this current approach, Rava disagrees with Rav Papa. Why? Because Rav Papa, whose statement is quoted, maintains that a borrower does not incur liability for unavoidable mishaps until the mishap occurs. Okay? In other words, guys, in his view, therefore, the owner couldn't collect from the father's real property, at least when the animal died on its own, because the father was not alive when the mishap took place, and he cannot incur liability at that time. So bottom line, Rava is saying that the debt was caused in the father's lifetime. There was a lien upon his real property, and that arrangement was enforced. And even if the animal died later, it's still in the family of the borrowers, and therefore there's responsibility. According to Rav Papa, we can only take the timeline of when the mishap occurred and not when the original borrowing arrangement was made. Okay, so they disagree. However, the one who teaches us as referring to the latter part maintains that it applies only to the latter part. But with the first part, it does not apply. So according to this way of understanding, if you're saying that the heir slaughtered the animal, and the reason why they're obligated to pay full price if the father is real property is because they, it's based on a slightly different factor. It's that they had intervened in the process of the damage, whereas in the other case, the animal died on its own through an unavoidable mishaps. Therefore, they have created damage themselves. So some obviously say that they only have to pay full price from if there's real property, otherwise 2/3, which is the cheaper rate. And why 2/3 is because even if they say we generally wouldn't have eaten meat and couldn't afford to do so, anytime meat was on special, even the poorer people would make a plan because it was a special price. So we say, all right, but if it wasn't a special price, you probably would have. So obviously, Rav Papa said if one had in his possession a cow that was stolen by him before, I tell you what, before we go to this other issue of the Sabbath, etc., I think we'll do that on Saturday night. But Rava and Rav Papa just disagree with regards to timelines. So, all right. Guys, thank you. Thank you. I think we've pretty much hit it. I don't want to go through another 6 minutes because you guys look a little fatigued. Let's start the minute Shabbos comes out.
I actually want to object on something quickly, just a little a difference of opinion. I don't agree that the poor go and buy meat when it's on special, because then all the poor people in Joburg would be dead because it's never special.
That's very funny. But Gavin's actually bringing up a good point. Maybe they're so poor they can't afford to even buy meat. But then how does that help the person that lent them the animal to work the animal to try and earn some revenue? Why should he take a complete loss? Because we learn that a judge has to be impartial. It cannot favor the rich nor have mercy on the poor. That's out of proportion to justice. Because what chesed is, guys, it's a bending of justice. Because the truth states that a person must pay. When there's extenuating circumstances of chesed, that's a bending of truth. It's needed for survival sometimes, because if you go according to the strict letter of the law, it can break a person, but it's not the truth. The truth is that person should be reimbursed in full for lending you his animal and helping you earn a living by having a working animal. Okay. All right. Shame, Arthur. I hope you're feeling better, mate.
I was trying to say something earlier. My Nadine's father and his sister passed away about 2 days ago. She died on the same day as her brother.
Yes.
That's so weird, mate.
But the Jewish one, not the secular one, the Jewish one. So they'll share your side on the Jewish one. How crazy is that?
That's crazy.
And he died like when he was 48, and she's like, I was 89 or something. You know, like many years later, man. On the day. So share your side.
Crazy. And what about your wedding, your and Adina and your mother's death on the 10th of December?
Oh, think about this way. Yeah, 10th of December, I got married. 10th of December, my mom died. 10th of June, Danny was born on Debbie's birthday. 10th of December, Adina was born. My son,
Exactly, that's mad. Yeah, you've told me that before, Arthur.
Yeah, everything's on the 10th. And if you make in our birthday, 26 and 14, we're divisible by 10.
That's 40, yes.
By 10. And the 4 of us.
Gee, it was
crazy, mate.
So
scary. No, these last 2 weeks, I don't know what's been happening. In the morning, I'm waking up, I've had this, like, feels like my arms are sore. I take painkillers, and I can't hold my bike. I'm riding my bike, but I'm taking one arm all the time until the painkillers kick in, and then I'm fine. The rest I'm good. I don't know what it is. It's been bugging me.
But it's not related to your heart or anything, eh?
No, I don't know if it's related. I've been doing gym. I don't know if that's the reason. It started since I've been doing gym. But I don't know if that's the only reason. I could be gout my wrist or something. I don't know. It's been doing me crazy. I'm feeling like really exhausted. I think a lot of it was my client dying and I was close to Jack. I spent like 3-4 months every day.
Some sort of beauty treatment or whatever. So your mom didn't want anybody to go and sorry.
Yeah.
So
So Damon.
Yeah.
Can we start like 45 minutes after Shabbos in Israel and in Joburg on Motzei
But
Shabbos?
I promise you, the minute I
soon
quickly
as-
do Mariv at short 15 minutes, I'll walk back immediately.
Great. Okay,
Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah,
I
we'll
can't do
also.
better than that.
I must
No,
make
you
sure.
must
I
well
have to-
start
No,
it
it's
off
no,
as
it's
quickly as
also
you
the
can.
same. Yeah, it's and I'll tell you what. I'll tell you, geez, how much time do we have?